At 18, with her hope nearly gone, Lydia Rowan answered a newspaper ad from a stranger. Some folks said mail-order brides were just desperate women, but Lydia was desperate for a fresh start. But when a fierce blizzard rolled in and danger came knocking, Lydia found out that some promises are worth fighting for. This is a story about real courage. Stay with me and tell me in the comments what town you are watching from. That bucket was just too heavy. Lydia knew it the second her aunt forced it into her hands. Icy water sloshed over the side, soaking her thin dress. The cold was a sharp bite, but she didn't dare drop it. Dropping it would give Aunt Margaret another reason. And Lydia had learned long ago not to give that woman any reasons at all. "Well now," her aunt's voice cut through the hall, sharp as a broken bottle. "Are you just going to stand there, or are you going to scrub these floors?" "Yes, Aunt Margaret." Lydia's voice was a whisper worn down by 6 long years. "Speak up, child. Your mother sure never taught you manners before she left you on my doorstep." Those words hurt worse than a slap. Lydia's grip tightened on the bucket. She wanted to scream, to tell her aunt how wrong she was about her mother. Her mother was a kind and gentle soul, everything this bitter woman was not. But she held her tongue. She always did. She just carried the bucket down the hall and got on her knees. The old wooden floors were splintered and rough against her skin. She put the brush in the water and began to scrub, her motions automatic. This had been her whole life since she lost her mother at 12. Just scrubbing and serving. The boarding house was in a grimy part of Philadelphia, a 3-story building that leaned. It always smelled like boiled cabbage and old smoke. Her aunt ran the place with an iron fist. She rented rooms to all sorts of rough men and kept the place barely clean. She treated Lydia less like family and more like a workhorse she didn't own. "You missed a spot." Lydia looked up. Her aunt was standing over her, arms crossed, with that usual sour look. "Where, Aunt Margaret?" A bony finger pointed at a spot just like all the others. "Are you blind as well as dumb?" "No, ma'am." "Then fix it. And when you're done here, the kitchen floor needs a good scrubbing. Mr. Brennan got sick in the hall again. You will clean that up too. And all the chamber pots need emptying." Lydia felt her stomach turn, but she just nodded. "Yes, Aunt Margaret," Lydia murmured. The older woman just looked her over with pure disgust. "You are 18 now, are you not?" she sneered. "Your own mother was already married at 16. At least she made herself useful before she passed on," the woman added, with a cruel twist of her lips. "But I suppose if you could not even manage to keep your own mother alive," she continued, "then you are not much use to anyone at all." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. They settled deep inside Lydia's chest, right in that empty place where hope used to live. She wanted to scream that it was not her fault, that she was just a 12-year-old girl. She wanted to tell her how she'd held her mother's hand until the very end. But her aunt had already turned and walked away. So Lydia scrubbed the floors until her hands were raw. She dumped the black, grimy water in the back alley, where the smell of rot was thick. The cold November wind cut right through her thin dress, making her shiver all over. Winter was on its way. Last year, Aunt Margaret had conveniently forgotten to give her a coat. She spent those cold months wrapped in a single tattered blanket, her fingers always numb. She figured this year would be no different. This year, and the next, and the one after that. The thought of it lasting forever made something inside her heart just snap. She was 18 years old, and this was her life. No handsome prince was coming to rescue her. There was only this life of scrubbing floors, eating scraps, and wasting away. She felt like she was dying a little more each and every day. "I just cannot do this anymore," she whispered to the alley rats skittering by. But what choice did she have? Well, her answer showed up 3 days later in a crumpled newspaper. She found it while cleaning Mr. Petton's room. He was a traveling salesman, almost never home. He always left old papers scattered on his floor. Usually she just used them for kindling. But this time, a headline on the back page stopped her cold. "Matrimonial opportunities out west." Her hands started to tremble as she smoothed the page out. She had heard whispers about such things. Lonely men out on the frontier, looking for good wives to receive through the mail. The other servants would gossip about girls who took such a wild chance, trading misery for the great unknown. Desperate women for desperate men. they would say with a nervous giggle. But as Lydia read the words, she did not see desperation at all. She saw a possibility, a way out. A rancher up in Montana was seeking a sturdy wife. A widower with 3 children needed a mother, and a 32-year-old Colorado cattleman was just looking for a wife with a good heart. The ad said he wanted a heart that wishes to be loved, offering a home and kindness, not riches. Lydia's fingers froze on that line. Her heart started beating like a drum, a heart to be loved. Goodness, when was the last time anyone had truly loved her? Not since her mama passed 6 long years ago. All she'd heard since was that she was a worthless burden. But this man in Colorado, this stranger, he was looking for a partner. The idea was so beautiful it made her eyes well up with tears. "What do you think you're doing?" She spun around to see Aunt Margaret in the doorway, her face beat red with rage. "I was just reading," Lydia stammered, but her aunt snatched the newspaper from her hands. "Stealing now, are we?" "No, I was not." A hard slap cut her off, snapping her head to the side. Pain exploded across her cheek. She tasted the sharp tang of blood in her mouth. "Don't you ever talk back to me, girl," her aunt snarled, her face just inches away. "You're lucky I took you in. Lucky I didn't toss a worthless orphan like you right into the street." Lydia stood there, silent as a stone, with her hand pressed to her burning cheek. "Answer me." "No, ma'am." "That's right, you're nothing. Nobody." She crumpled the newspaper and threw it at Lydia's feet. "Now finish these rooms. If I catch you slacking again, you'll sleep down in the cellar with the rats." She stormed out, slamming the door. Lydia stood frozen for a long moment, her heart pounding in her chest. Then she slowly bent down and picked up the wadded paper, smoothing it out with shaking hands. She carefully tore out the advertisement about the 32-year-old Colorado cattle rancher. She folded it into a tiny square and tucked it in her dress pocket, next to her mother's old handkerchief. That night, shivering in her tiny cold room, Lydia made up her mind. She was going to answer that ad, but getting paper and ink would be a real trial. Aunt Margaret kept all those supplies under lock and key, but she remembered Mr. Peaton, the boarder, sometimes left his writing case out. 2 days later, while he was out, she slipped into his room for just a moment. She borrowed one single sheet of paper and a little bit of ink, feeling a deep pang of guilt. By the dim light of a candle she'd snuck from the kitchen, Lydia started to write. It took her 7 tries to get the letter just right. The first was too formal. The next sounded too desperate. She didn't want his pity. The 6th was too short. But the 7th, well, the 7th felt honest and true. Her 7th letter came from a place deep inside her soul. It was a place that still remembered her mother's gentle smile. She wrote at Irwin, "Dear Sir, my name is Lydia Rowan, and I am 18 years old. I saw your advertisement in the paper and it gave me the courage to write. I feel I must be honest with you. I have no family left to speak of. I live with my aunt and have no money or property to my name. I can only offer you myself, a promise to work hard and be a good wife. You wrote that you seek a heart that wants to be loved. I believe I have one. I am healthy, strong, and I know how to keep a good house. More than anything, I promise you honesty and my complete loyalty. I know this is a strange way to do things, and you might think me foolish. But your words gave me hope, a feeling I have not had in a long, long time. If you are willing to take a chance on someone like me, I will be waiting for your reply." She added the boarding house address along with a special instruction. "Please mark it household supplies so it will not cause any trouble." Her hand trembled. She was offering her life to a complete stranger so far away. He could be a cruel man, maybe even worse than her Aunt Margaret, but he could also be kind. It was a chance she felt she had to take. The next morning, long before sunrise, Lydia slipped out of the house. She walked the 6 blocks to the post office, clutching 3 pennies for the stamp. Her shoes were thin and worn, but she barely felt the cold from the street. The clerk read the address. "Colorado," he said. "That is a mighty long way." "Yes, sir." He looked at her kindly. "Running from something or to it?" She answered, "Both." He nodded, stamped her letter, and softly wished her good luck. She walked back home as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in gold. And for the first time in 6 years, Lydia felt a tiny flutter of real hope. The waiting, though, was the hardest part. She watched for the postman every single day. Each day he passed by, that little bit of hope she had started to fade. 1 week turned into 3. He is not going to write, she told herself in the freezing rain. Aunt Margaret was right about me. I am a nobody. But on the 23rd day, something changed. One day the postman finally stopped. He held a thick, important envelope. Lydia nearly flew down the stairs. That one's for me, she lied. She snatched it and shut the door. Safe in her room, her hands shook. She carefully tore open the seal. The letter was from Grant Mercer. He was a 32-year-old rancher. He lived all alone in Colorado. His ranch was 200 acres. He owned it outright, free and clear. He had been alone since his brother died. Life out there, he wrote, was hard. He was looking for a true partner. He did not care about a dowry. Her honest spirit was enough. He knew it was a big leap of faith, but he swore he would be kind. He would always protect and provide. She would be his wife, his equal. He offered to send a ticket money. The train ride would be 4 days. They could marry when she was ready. He promised not to rush her. If she came, he would be waiting. He signed it simply, yours in hope. A postscript asked if she read books. Lydia read it 3 times, weeping. He was honest, kind and lonely like her. She clutched the letter, her decision made. She wrote back right away. Yes, she would come marry him, and yes, she loved books. It was a sweet memory she had of her late mother. His reply came fast, in just 12 days. Inside was a train ticket to Stillwater, Colorado. He called her Lydia, and her heart leaped. He sounded so happy. He sent the ticket for December 15th and $20 for her journey. It was more money than she had ever held in her life. He told her to bring a book for the long trip, and that he would be waiting for her at the station. He'd be the tall, nervous man wearing a brown hat. 3 weeks. She had 3 weeks to plan her escape. She dared not tell a soul, especially not Aunt Margaret. So she kept on with her chores, quiet as a mouse. In secret, she bought a small bag with 5 of the dollars. She carefully packed her few worldly possessions. Her mother's Bible, a faded dress, and her mended stockings, a comb from her grandmother, and his letters tied with string. She hid the bag under her bed and waited. On December 14th, she lay awake all night. At 3 in the morning, she quietly got dressed in the dark. Grabbing her bag, she took one last look at her prison of a room. For 6 years, she had suffered in that place. She felt a wave of relief to finally be leaving. She crept down the stairs of the silent boarding house. The front door opened without a sound. The cold winter air bit at her skin, but she pushed forward. She walked the mile to the train station without looking back. Her heart pounded with fear that she would be caught. But the streets were empty. She was finally free. The morning train was ready to board. Ticket, the conductor said without a glance. Lydia handed him the ticket, praying he would not ask any questions. He punched it. 4 days to Colorado. You got food? She nodded yes. She had bread and cheese. Platform 3, leaving in 20 minutes. She climbed on, found a window seat, and tucked her bag away. The car was quiet, with only an old couple and a businessman inside. Lydia watched the platform fill up, her heart pounding in her chest. She kept expecting to see Aunt Margaret's furious face in the crowd. The minutes passed, and she never appeared. Then the train lurched forward. With a great hiss of steam, they began to move, leaving Philadelphia behind. She watched the dirty, cramped city she was leaving for good, a place where she was nothing more than a servant. Heading west to a man she did not know, Lydia felt a tear on her cheek. For the first time in 6 long years, it was a tear of hope. The journey was long and tiring, rattling through countless small towns. Lydia watched the whole world change outside of her window. The crowded cities gave way to a sky so big, it stole her breath. Other passengers came and went, like a family with 3 noisy children. A young couple, sweet on each other, replaced the elderly folks. Their soft whispers and giggles made Lydia feel a little warm. At night, she clutched her bag and tried to sleep on the hard seat. She dreamed of her cruel aunt and a tall man with no face. What if Grant saw her and was disappointed? The worry grew bigger with every mile the train traveled. By the 3rd day, she was out of food, exhausted, and very scared. On the 4th morning, a woman across the way leaned over. "First time out west?" she asked kindly. I'm Mrs. Henderson. Lydia decided to be truthful. I'm meeting my fiancé. He has a ranch near Stillwater, Lydia added. Mrs. Henderson's eyes lit up. Is it a mail order arrangement? Lydia's cheeks burned. Yes, ma'am. But Mrs. Henderson just smiled kindly. No shame in that, honey, and she said, what is his name? Grant. Grant Mercer. She asked, and could you love him? Lydia thought of his honest, kind letters. She remembered the $20 he sent. Yes, Lydia said softly. I think I could. The train pulled into Stillwater Station. Lydia stood up on legs that were shaking. Through the glass, she saw the platform. The town was tiny, just one dirt road. Behind it, snowy mountains stood like giants. Good luck, dear, Mrs. Henderson said softly. Lydia stepped down into the cold mountain air. The platform was crowded with people, and standing alone was a tall, nervous man. Grant Mercer was not handsome, not really. His face was weathered from long days outside. His hands were calloused from good hard work, but his eyes were full of uncertain hope. Lydia took a breath and walked toward him. Mr. Mercer, she asked. Miss Rowan, and he replied. They stood for a moment, two strangers. You came, he said, his voice full of relief. I told you I would, she answered him. He nervously twisted the hat in his hands. You must be tired. I got you a hotel room. He trailed off, his ears turning bright red. I do not need more time, Mr. Mercer. I made my choice when I boarded that train. Gratitude. How about tomorrow? You can rest. Lydia had no money and nowhere else to go, but she clung to his promise of kindness. Tomorrow is fine. Grant took her bag, relieved. He was very careful not to touch her hand. He was giving her space. Let's get you settled. They walked off the platform toward an unknown future. Lydia felt that little flutter of hope again. The hotel was a simple two-story building. It was the Stillwater Inn with a cozy lobby. A woman behind the desk watched them with curiosity. So this is the young lady? She asked warmly. Yes, ma'am. Miss Rowan, this is Mrs. Callahan. Mrs. Callahan's eyes softened. You look worn out, dear. A hot bath would be wonderful, Lydia admitted. Her room is ready, top of the stairs. I'll bring up hot water and some food. Grant carried her single bag up the staircase. This felt improper, but this was not Philadelphia. He unlocked a small but very clean room. After years in a closet, this was a luxury. I'll pay Mrs. Callahan for your stay, he said. I will be back at 10. We wed at 11. She looked at the stranger who would be her husband. He stood awkwardly by the door holding his hat. Mr. Mercer, she said softly, thank you for this chance. I am the one who should be thanking you. You took the real risk, coming all this way. Why did you place the advertisement? She had to ask. Well, there are only 3 unmarried women in Stillwater. Sally Martin is 17, and she fancies the blacksmith's son. Widow Perkins is 62, and she swore off men for good after 3 husbands. And Miss Henrietta Grove said 2 years ago she would rather be an old maid than marry a cattleman. Lydia smiled a little. I understand. The truth is, Miss Rowan, Lydia, I am not good with people. I talk to cattle just fine, and my horses understand me, but I am lost in a room full of folks. He shook his head. My brother Daniel was the charming one. He could charm a fence post. I just do not know how. Writing the advertisement seemed much easier. I could write down what I could never say. Lydia understood that feeling well. Your letters were very kind. I meant every single word. He looked her in the eye and she saw he was sincere. I know tomorrow will be strange. We are strangers, but I will do my best to be a good husband to you. I will give you time to get settled, to decide if you can be happy. And if you cannot, he swallowed hard. I will understand. Where would I go? Lydia asked softly. I would give you money for a ticket back east. Or anywhere else you wanted. You will not be trapped here, Lydia. I am not that kind of man. She believed him. Maybe that was foolish, but she did. I will see you in the morning then, Grant said, backing away. Tomorrow morning. He paused at the door. Lydia, I am truly glad you came here. Then he was gone, his boots echoing down the hall. Lydia sat on the bed, feeling weak in the knees. Mrs. Callahan brought hot water in a tray with stew, bread, and apple pie. Lydia ate it all. She bathed in the tin tub, washing away 4 days of travel dirt. She washed her hair with the soap Mrs. Callahan gave her and combed it with her grandmother's comb. She then put on her cleanest shift and climbed into bed. The sheets smelled like lavender. The mattress was soft. Outside, she heard the town of Stillwater quieting down for the night. A dog barked, and someone played a fiddle. Tomorrow she would marry Grant Mercer. Her life was about to change forever. Lydia felt her heart beating fast. She was not sure if she was more scared or excited. Maybe she was both. She fell asleep wondering. The wedding was in a small white church. Lydia wore her mother's plain funeral dress, the only one she owned. She had tried to press it with Mrs. Callahan's iron. It was black wool and not very flattering, but it was all she had. She put her mother's handkerchief at the neckline, but she still felt like she was going to a funeral, not her own wedding. Grant was waiting there for her. He wore his best suit, a brown one that looked stiff on him. His hair was wet and combed back, and he had a small shaving nick on his jaw. He looked plain terrified. The preacher was a cheerful little man named Pastor Williams, who was trying to make it a happy day. In the quiet church, the Callahans stood as their only witnesses. Pastor Williams began the short, awkward service. Lydia barely heard him, staring at the stranger beside her. Grant stood perfectly still, his jaw set hard. The pastor asked Grant to say his vows, to have and to hold, through good times and bad. "I do," Grant said, his voice steady and clear. Now Lydia had to make the very same promise. This was her very last chance to turn and run, but there was nowhere to go. "I do," she whispered. Grant's hands trembled slightly as he produced the rings. The one for her was too large. She slid his on his finger. His hand felt warm and strong. They were officially married. "You may kiss your bride." Grant went completely still. Lydia held her breath as he leaned in to kiss her forehead. The gentle touch was a kindness she did not expect. Mrs. Callahan hugged her tightly. "Congratulations, honey." And just like that, she was no longer Lydia Rowan. She was Lydia Mercer. Grant helped her onto the wagon seat, keeping a careful distance. Her small bag sat in the back, looking lost and alone. He accepted a basket of food with a quiet thank you. Lydia watched Stillwater disappear as they rode away. "It is about an hour's ride to the ranch," Grant finally said. "The road gets rough in spots, so hold on tight." "All right." The land around them was wide open, empty, and beautiful. The air was clean and cold, so different from back east. "Are you warm enough?" he asked. "Yes," she lied, not wanting to complain. He must have sensed it, because he pulled out a thick wool blanket. He draped it over her lap without a word. "Thank you," she said softly. Grant cleared his throat. "I ought to tell you about the ranch. It's 200 acres, but only 50 are good for cattle. My brother and I built the 4-room house, so it is sturdy, but it is not fancy." She said, "I do not need fancy. Call me Grant. We are married now." She tested his name. "And I am Lydia." He said her name gently, like it was something precious. "It was my grandmother's comb," she said, happy he remembered. He asked what her grandmother was like. No one ever asked that. "She was very kind," Lydia said. "She told me stories of Ireland. She came to America all alone when she was just 16 years old. She met my grandfather at the house where she was a maid. They had 5 children together, but only my mother grew up. She passed away when I was 8 years old, but she was always grateful." Lydia touched the comb. "This is all that I have left of her." Grant got quiet. "My own mother died when I was only 10. My father started drinking. My brother Daniel and I raised ourselves." "I am so sorry," she whispered. His voice was full of old pain. "When he died, we took what little money there was and came west." His hands tightened. "We were going to build something. Then Daniel got sick. It went into his lungs. He was gone in just 3 weeks." "You must miss him terribly," she said. "Every single day," he replied. "I still turn to tell him something, but the space is just empty." Lydia knew that feeling well. "I used to set 2 plates for supper. My aunt would get mad, but I could not remember she was gone." They looked at each other, 2 people who had lost everyone they loved. "Maybe that is why we will understand each other," Grant said at last. "We both know what it is like to be lonely." It felt honest. As they came over a hill, the ranch appeared, and Lydia gasped. It was tucked into a valley, safe from the worst of the wind. A small log house with a stone chimney, a barn, and other buildings. Cattle dotted the snowy fields, and the mountains rose up behind it all. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Grant looked surprised. Philadelphia was only smoke and buildings. Here, the whole world just opens up. His face softened. "My brother said that. He said this big space let him breathe." He stopped the wagon, helping her down. She stumbled, but his strong hands held her. "Welcome home," he said. Could this be home? The cabin was clean but very simple. One main room was neat and tidy. "Let me show you around," he offered. "This is the main room. That's mine. And that one, well, that one's yours. I promised you your own private space." She found a small, simple, neat room. It was plain, private, and all hers. Her throat felt tight. "Thank you. It's more than I have ever had." He nodded. "I'll go get some wood. Gets cold at night. There is a well. We've got 6 chickens. I can help. You're my wife, Lydia, not a servant. Wives work too. I need a job." A real, genuine smile crossed his face. "All right, but for today, you just rest. I've got my own chores to handle. I'll be back at sunset. Help yourself." He left her alone in the house. The silence here felt so very different. This quiet was peaceful, not lonely. Lydia quickly unpacked her few belongings. Her mother's Bible went beside the bed. The whole thing took all of 5 minutes. Then she learned the house, finding everything tidy. Grant clearly ran a tight, clean household. In the kitchen, she found flour and beans. There was enough to make a good meal. By sunset, a fine stew was bubbling on the stove. She wiped her hands on a found apron. Grant came in, bringing the cold with him. He stopped, seeing the table set for 2. "You did not have to do all this. I told you I'll go mad with idle hands." He washed up, and they sat for supper. Grant took a bite, and his eyebrows shot up. "This is mighty good. Really good. Best stew I have had in 3 years." He noticed the cleaning too. "You cleaned?" "Thank you. The place looks brand new." After supper, Grant insisted on washing dishes. They moved carefully in the small kitchen. "I usually read by the fire," he offered. "You are welcome to join me." Lydia was not tired, just too nervous to sleep. "I would like to read," she said softly. He settled by the fire with a few books. She picked one and began to read. The only sounds were the fire and turning pages. It was the most peaceful night in 6 years. At 9 o'clock, Grant stood. "Morning comes early. I want to help with your schedule. When do you get up?" Grant looked uncertain. "Dawn. But Lydia, you do not have to." "I want to," she insisted. He finally nodded. "Dawn it is. I will knock on your door." They stood there like 2 married strangers who did not know how to say goodnight. After a quiet "sleep well," she went to her room, her heart pounding. She could hear him through the wall, her husband, settling in just a few feet away. He had not demanded a thing of her, keeping his word completely. He gave her the space and respect he had promised. A true gentleman. Lydia climbed into bed, pulling the heavy quilt to her chin. She was married, she had a home, and she was finally safe. For the first time in 6 long years, she fell asleep without a single fear. Their days soon settled into a quiet rhythm, starting before the sun came up. They would eat the breakfast she made in a comfortable silence. Then Grant worked the ranch while Lydia took care of the little house. But with so little to do, she quickly grew restless. "I could help you outside," she suggested one morning over their coffee. He warned her the work was hard and cold. "I am not afraid of hard work." "Please, Grant, I am going stir-crazy in here. Let me help." He sighed, but she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "You are a stubborn one." "You say that like it is a bad thing," he grinned. "All right, dress warm. We can mend a fence if you are truly determined to freeze your fingers off." Lydia loved it. The work was hard, but the cold air felt good. Grant was a patient teacher, showing her how to scatter feed for the chickens. He showed her how to hold fence wire taut while he worked. They worked side by side in a companionable quiet, and she found herself watching him. She noticed his gentle way with the cattle and his steady, practiced hands. He always made sure she was warm, even offering his own gloves to her. He was a genuinely kind man. About a week later, she heard hoofbeats. A wagon was approaching, driven by a woman with bright red hair. "Howdy," the woman called out. "You must be Grant's new wife." "Howdy, I'm Sarah Mitchell from the next ranch over." She was very pregnant, but hopped down with surprising ease. "Sorry it took so long to welcome you all proper." She handed Lydia a basket. "Brought y'all some cake." Sarah's eyes then fell on Lydia's patched and worn dress. "Honey, is this all the clothing that you brought with you?" Lydia flushed with shame. "It was all I really had." "Well, that just won't do. I've got plenty to spare. They don't fit my belly now, but they'll look fine on you. Now you come on in awed and have some tea." Lydia felt an instant warmth from Sarah's direct kindness. They talked all afternoon just like they were old friends. Sarah spoke of the dozen or so ranching families nearby. "Grant is a good man," she said, "even if he is quiet. He helped my husband for 2 weeks and wouldn't take a dime. He has been awfully lonely since his brother passed on. I reckon marrying a stranger is just about the hardest thing. My own marriage to my Tom was arranged by our folks. We were little more than strangers on our wedding day. But with some time and patience, our love started to grow. You and Grant can find that same thing for yourselves." "I want to," Lydia said softly, "but I'm not sure if he does." "Honey, that man advertised for a wife. He surely wants this. Sometimes love doesn't strike like lightning. It just grows slow." That evening, Grant came home to find Lydia in a new dress. The whole cabin smelled warm and wonderful, like a real home. He just stopped dead in the doorway, staring right at her. "Sarah Mitchell was here. She lent it to me," Lydia explained. "Mind? You look," he stammered, turning red. "You look real nice." It was his first compliment, and it warmed her clear to her soul. She told him all about Sarah's visit and the other ranching families. Grant allowed that the Mitchells were good folks. Tom was a hard worker, he said. As for Sarah, well, she was a talker. Lydia just laughed, saying she liked her. When she mentioned their dinner invitation, Grant got real quiet. He said he was not much for socializing. Lydia insisted they were both invited, but Grant just worried he'd say something foolish and embarrass her. Lydia put her fork down and looked him straight in the eye. She told him he was one of the smartest men she knew. He ran the whole ranch by himself and built their house with his own 2 hands. He knew the land and the animals. Why on earth would he embarrass her? He mumbled that he just was not good at making small talk. He figured he was better with animals than people. Lydia smiled, saying she was better with books herself. She reckoned between the two of them, they would manage just fine. He looked at her, and his whole expression softened. He asked if she really wanted him to go. "You are my husband," she said. "Of course I do." He looked down, but she saw the small smile on his face. "All right then," he said. "We will go together." That night, they read by the fire like they always did. Grant was on the floor and she was in her chair. But this time he kept glancing at her. When their eyes met, he held her gaze for a long moment. "What is it?" she finally asked. He just said, "Nothing. That dress just looks real nice on you." She felt her cheeks get warm. She told him she was glad Sarah stopped by. She had worried he might be getting lonely out here. "I am not lonely," Lydia said, and she meant it. Grant's face softened. "Me neither." A quiet, new feeling passed between them. Then Grant cleared his throat and looked back at his book. Lydia did the same, though she could not focus. She just read the same page over and over. She was too aware of him sitting there and the way her heart was suddenly beating a little faster. About 2 weeks into their marriage, a fierce cold snap hit the valley, freezing everything solid. Grant was up before the sun, breaking the thick ice on the water trough so the cattle could drink. Lydia did her best to help, her fingers aching with cold, right through the gloves he gave her. They were heading back to the house when Grant stopped dead in his tracks and cursed under his breath. He pointed up at the barn roof. It was piled high with snow. "I have to clear that," he started, "before it does damage." "I will help you," she offered. "No," he said, his voice firm. "It is too slick and dangerous up there. I will do it." She saw the set of his jaw and knew not to argue. "Just be careful," she said, and went inside the house. Through the kitchen window, she watched him climb up on the barn roof with a big shovel. He was working steady when she heard it. A loud, sharp crack followed by Grant shouting her name. She ran outside and saw him sliding down that icy roof, trying to get a handhold on something. He caught himself right on the edge as his shovel went clattering down to the ground. "Grant!" she cried, running for the barn. I am fine, he called, his voice tight on the icy roof. Come on down, she begged. Almost done, he replied. Grant, if you fall. Her own fear cut the words short. He saw her face and came right on down the ladder. She grabbed his arms. You scared me something awful. He just saw her trembling hands gripping his coat. You nearly fell, she cried, her voice all shaky. I cannot lose someone else, she whispered to him. He understood then, warming her cold hands in his. I am okay. I promise I will be more careful now. Something new and quiet passed between them in the cold. You care, he said, sounding mighty surprised by it. You really care what happens to me. Of course, she said, and knew deep down it was true. He was more than just the man who had saved her. He was someone whose absence would leave a real hole. Yes, she whispered, her voice soft. I care. His hands tightened. She thought for sure he would kiss her. He leaned in close, his eyes dropping to her lips. But then he pulled back. We ought to go inside. The whole evening felt different after that moment. By the fire, he sat on the far end of her big chair. Close enough she could feel his warmth right beside her. He took her book when she started to nod off. Good night, she said. He stood right up with her. Before she left, he gently caught her hand. Thank you, he said real soft, for caring. Thank you for this home, she answered back. It is your home now. You belong right here. The words settled deep in her soul. She finally belonged. Lydia lay awake in her little room listening to that wind picking up. It had started as a whisper, but was now growing stronger, rattling the shutters. She pulled her quilts tight, but something just felt wrong in the air. The heavy air woke her for good when she heard Grant's boots hit the floor. She looked out the window and saw nothing but darkness. It was the middle of the night. Lydia found Grant already dressed and pulling on his thick coat. What's wrong? She asked. He looked surprised to see her up. A storm's coming in, a bad one. I gotta go secure the barn and the cattle. As he spoke, a powerful gust of wind slammed against the house. Her eyes went wide. How bad? He shook his head. Bad enough. These winter storms can bury fences overnight. I have to go now. I'm coming with you, she declared. No, Grant's voice was firm. You stay put. If it is as bad as you say, you might need my help out there. He walked over to her. That is exactly why you are staying here. I need to know you're safe. She wanted to argue, but she saw the real fear in his eyes was for her. She finally gave a nod. All right, but you please be careful out there. He squeezed her shoulders gently. I will be back as soon as I can. And then he was gone, his lantern bobbing across the yard. Soon the swirling snow just swallowed his light whole. The storm hit with a terrible speed. The wind howled like a wild animal. Snow hammered the windows so hard she thought the glass would break. An hour went by, then another. Lydia paced the small room, her heart pounding. She strained to hear anything over the wind. Where was Grant? Surely it should not take this long. She told herself he was just fine, but her mind painted awful pictures of him lost in the blinding snow. Him hurt and unable to make his way back. Then a huge crash shook the house. It sounded like it came from the direction of the barn. Lydia ran to the window but could see nothing but a pure white wall of snow. Another hour crept past. The clock showed 3:30. He'd been gone for 3 hours. Something was terribly wrong. Lydia could feel it deep down in her bones. She got a terrible feeling that Grant was in trouble. Then it hit her, clear as day. She loved the man, but there was no time for that. He needed her now. Lydia threw on every single warm thing she owned. She layered dresses, a heavy coat, and thick stockings. Wrapping a scarf around her face, she grabbed the lantern. The moment she opened the door, a howling wind hit her. Snow blasted her face, stealing her breath away. For a second, she thought this was pure madness. But Grant was out there. She pushed into the storm. The whole world just disappeared into a swirl of white. The deep snow made every single step a hard fight. That bitter cold cut right through all her layers. Her lantern's light was nearly useless in the blizzard. Grant, she screamed out, her feet already going numb. The wind just snatched the name from her mouth. She kept moving, her lungs burning from the cold air. Ice on her eyelashes made it almost impossible to see. All of a sudden, her foot hit something and she fell. The lantern flew from her grip and sputtered out. In the dark, She felt around for whatever tripped her. Her hand touched cloth, then an arm. It was Grant. He was laying there on his side, already half buried. She shook him hard and heard a faint groan. He was alive. Thank the Lord. But he would not open his eyes. She found a deep gash on his head, the blood freezing fast. There was no way she could carry a man his size. She looked around, desperate, but saw only the storm. They would both perish out here if she didn't do something. "Grant, wake up," she begged. "You have to help me." "Lydia," he slurred, his eyes barely able to focus. "You shouldn't be out here," he mumbled. "Go back inside." "I am not leaving you," she said, hoisting his dead weight onto her shoulder. A cold panic began to rise in her throat as they started to move. She half dragged him through the snow, every muscle in her body screaming. They were lost in the blizzard, running on nothing but pure hope. "Just a little further," she gasped, her lungs burning with the cold air. Suddenly, his legs gave out from under him, and they both collapsed. "Get up, Grant, please," she cried out, her own strength nearly gone. "Leave me," he whispered into the snow. "You need to save yourself." "No," she snapped, her voice as sharp and cold as the wind. "I did not come all this way from Philadelphia just to watch you die out here. Now get up." That fire in her voice finally cut through his daze. He gritted his teeth, and with her help, he pushed himself back up. They staggered onward, numb to the world, driven by a stubborn will to live. Then, like a prayer answered, a faint light appeared through the snow. It was the house. She had left a lamp burning in the window for him. "We're almost there," she cried. "Just 10 more feet. You can do it." They fell through the doorway together, landing in a heap on the floor. She kicked the door shut, finally silencing the awful howling wind. Grant was half frozen. She dragged his body closer to the warmth of the stove. She pulled off his icy coat and then piled every single blanket she owned on him. She got the fire roaring hot, desperately trying to chase the cold from his bones. His head was still bleeding badly. Her hands were trembling, something fierce. She gently cleaned the gash, relieved it was not as deep as she had first feared. But it needed sewing up. She took a breath and remembered her mama doing the same. She found a needle and thread, her fingers fumbling with the tiny eye. Whispering little apologies with every single stitch, she sewed the wound closed. Through it all, Grant never stirred, not even so much as a twitch. And his dead silence scared her more than any scream ever could. She bandaged his head and looked him over for anything else broken. But Lord, he was cold as a stone. Lydia took off her own wet coat and laid down right beside him, wrapping her arms around him, trying to share what little body heat she had left. "Don't you dare die on me," she whispered right against his chest. "Do you hear me, Grant Mercer?" "You promised." She held on to him all through the long dark night as the blizzard howled. Slowly, so slowly, she felt a little warmth start to come back into his skin. His breathing, which had been whisper-thin, finally got deeper and steadier. Dawn finally came, gray and dim, through the snow-caked windows of the cabin. Lydia was worn out down to the bone, but she never left his side. Then his eyes opened. He stared at the ceiling for a second, all confused. Then he found her. "Lydia," he rasped, "I'm right here. You got hit by something out in the storm. I found you and brought you back inside." He raised a hand to his bandaged head, wincing. "You came out in that storm for me? After I told you to stay put." "Well, you could have died," she said. "So could you. You're welcome." He just stared at her, and she saw a whole mess of feelings in his eyes. Shock, gratitude, and something else that made her breath catch. "You saved my life," he said softly. Grant's hand found hers under the quilt, his fingers tangling with hers. "I've never had anyone." His voice cracked a little. "Daniel would have just called me a fool for going out there. My father would have said I got what I deserved, but you risked everything for me." "Of course I did." Lydia squeezed his hand. "You're my husband." He met her eyes. "Is that the only reason?" She saw the raw hope in his gaze, the question he was almost too scared to ask, and she knew this was it. This was the moment everything changed. "No," she whispered. "That's not the only reason." His eyes went wide and his free hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek so tenderly it made her heart ache. "Lydia," he breathed. "I know this ain't how these things are supposed to work, us being strangers and all. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being a stranger. You just became everything. Tears started to well up in Lydia's eyes. When you didn't come back, I realized something. I couldn't stand the thought of this life without you in it. Not to survive, but because I want you here. Is that enough? Grant asked, his voice low. Is wanting each other enough to build something real? I think so, she answered. I think maybe wanting is just how love gets started. He searched her eyes and then, slow and careful, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. This kiss wasn't like their wedding. This one was warm and real with unspoken feelings. Lydia kissed him right back, her hand grabbing his shirt, holding on to this man. When they finally parted for air, Grant rested his forehead against hers. I surely don't deserve you, he whispered. You're wrong. You deserve everything. They lay there together, wrapped up in blankets by the warm fire. While the blizzard raged outside, their small house felt like a true home. The careful distance they had kept was gone, replaced by something raw and real. Something worth fighting for. Once Grant could sit up, Lydia brought him hot soup. She checked his wound and was relieved to see it was healing clean. He fussed about needing to check the cattle, but one look from Lydia silenced him. The cattle can wait, she said firmly. You are not going back out there. A small smile touched his lips. Yes, ma'am. The storm lasted 3 days. For 3 days, they were snowed in, learning about one another. He told her about building the ranch with Daniel and all their old dreams. Lydia told him about her mother's stories from her life in Philadelphia. Do you ever miss it? Grant asked her as they watched the fire. No, she said. There is nothing but bad memories waiting for me there. Still, this must feel like the middle of nowhere compared to a big city. She looked around the simple room, at the rough walls and the snowy view. Then she looked right at his earnest face. This feels like home to me. The relief on his face was powerful. He pulled her in close to his side. On the third night, as the storm finally started to calm, Grant spoke up. I've been thinking, he said, about our sleeping arrangements. He confessed, I've gotten used to having you close these last few nights. It's the best I've slept since Daniel passed on. What are you trying to say, Grant? She asked in a soft voice. I'm saying your room is still yours, but if you were willing, I'd like you to share my bed, not for anything else, he added quickly. Just to sleep, just to have you close, would that be all right? Lydia thought about the comfort she found in his steady breathing nearby, beside him, and how his presence made her feel truly safe. I think I'd like that, she whispered. That night, she moved her few belongings into Grant's bigger room. It had a wide window that looked right out toward the mountains. He'd cleaned it spotless for her. At first, they lay there stiff as boards, careful not to touch one another. But soon enough, they drifted closer, and his arm came to rest around her waist. Her head found the hollow of his shoulder, and they fell asleep just like that. Two people, strangers just a month ago, now tangled together like they'd done it their whole lives. When morning came, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed by snow. It would take days just to dig out. But Grant was alive. Lydia was alive. They were together. He insisted on checking the cattle, and this time, she went right along with him through the deep snow. They had lost 2 head to the storm, which hurt, but the rest were huddled up and safe. As they stood there in the brilliant sunshine, looking over the quiet white valley, Grant spoke. I should have listened to you he said, about not taking such a fool risk. If you hadn't come for me, he trailed off. She just said, but I did, and you're fine because of it. He turned and took both her hands in his. I've been alone for so long, Lydia. I plain forgot what it was like to have someone care if I lived or died. You gave me a home when I had nothing, she reminded him gently. You saved me first, Grant. So is that what we're doing then? Saving each other? He asked, a small smile on his face. I reckon that's exactly what we do, she said. He pulled her close into his arms. Around them, the world was silent and beautiful. For the first time, Lydia felt like she belonged. They spent the whole day digging out, working side by side in the bright sun. That evening, bone-tired and aching, they collapsed onto the bed they now shared. He ran his fingers through her hair. Tell me about your mother, he said softly. And so, Lydia told him all about her mama's laugh and her strength. When she finished, Grant told her all about his own mother and his brother. He told her about Daniel and all the good people they had both loved and lost. They shared their grief like a warm blanket, something to carry together instead of alone. I wish they could have met you, Grant said, his voice a little rough. Daniel, especially. He always said I needed someone who could match my own stubborn streak. Your mother sounds like she was a wonderful woman. She was, he said. She used to say a person's worth is not in what they have. He held her close. You almost died for me. Just promise me you'll be careful, she said. I promise, he said, kissing her hair. I cannot lose you. She looked up at him. Grant, I'm falling in love with you. He went still. You think, he whispered. No, I know it. Oh, his smile was like the dawn. Jane, God, because I already am, right from the start. You look so brave, Dee. I was a wreck. He silenced her with a deep, meaningful kiss. You were beautiful, he insisted. And you're mine. And you're mine, she whispered, full of love. This was not some mail-order agreement. This was two people finding real connection. It was true love. Afterwards, she began to cry. What's wrong, he asked. No, everything's right. These are happy tears. I was just a servant. Now I'm truly happy for the first time. He wiped her tears. I was just a lonely man. You came and this house finally feels like home. My life feels full again. He kissed her gently. You gave me a reason to look forward. Lydia woke in the night, safe and warm. She was in the arms of a good, loving man. The girl from the train felt so far away. She was a wife and a partner who mattered. She was loved. The next weeks were pure joy. As winter faded, they settled into their new life. They were truly married. At the Mitchells' dinner, Grant finally came out of his shell. Sarah pulled Lydia aside, saying, I do not know what you did, but I have never seen Grant smile so much. He is good for me, too, Lydia replied, a warmth in her heart. She watched Grant helping Tom out in the barn, their easy laughter floating on the evening air. Later, on the ride home, Grant finally admitted, that was not as terrible as I figured it would be. Lydia laughed. That is high praise coming from you. I am glad you have good folks here. We have good folks here, Grant corrected, taking her hand in his. As spring bloomed, Lydia threw herself into making their ranch a true home. She planted a small herb garden and sewed bright new curtains for the windows. She took a simple pride in the place, making it theirs with every little touch. This was her home now, and she was going to make it shine with love. Then one morning, a sudden wave of dizziness hit her so hard she nearly fell. Grant was there in a second, his strong hands holding her steady. What is wrong? As she sat down, another thought struck her, and her hand went to her belly. She was late, more than 2 weeks late. Her heart started to pound. Grant knelt by her, his face full of concern. Should I go get the doctor? No, she whispered, her voice trembling. I do not think so. I think I might be. Understanding slowly dawned in Grant's eyes. You think you might be pregnant again? Lydia could only nod. For a long moment, he just stared. Then a huge, brilliant smile spread across his face, lighting him up from the inside out. Really? The signs are all there, she said, placing his hand on her stomach. I think there is a baby. He looked up, his eyes filled with tears of pure joy. A baby, he whispered. Our baby. But in the next instant, the smile was gone, replaced by sheer panic. He pulled his hand back like he had been burned, his face as white as a sheet. My mother, he said, his voice a hollow echo, she died giving birth to me. Lydia's own heart felt like it stopped beating. She watched terror take over his face. I was born and she died, he continued, his voice shaking with old pain. My father blamed me. He said I was the reason she was gone. Grant, no, she said, but he was lost in the memory. He was right. I killed her. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a desperate fear. What if the same thing happens to you? What if I lose you too? Lydia stood up and went to him, taking his face in her hands. Look at me. Your mother's passing was not your fault. You were just a baby. Childbirth is a hard road, but we can't live our lives scared of what if. That is like worrying if the ranch will burn down tomorrow. We can only deal with what is happening right now, Grant. But you are carrying my child, he choked out, and you could die. The raw pain in his voice nearly broke her. She pulled him into a tight embrace. He shook with deep, silent sobs against her shoulder. "I cannot lose you," he whispered. "Not now that I have a reason to live." "You are not going to lose me," she promised, though they both knew the danger. On the frontier, women died in childbirth. Help was a long way off. But Lydia had built this life with him and refused to let fear win. "You are right," she said, looking him in the eye. "I do not know for sure. But I refuse to spend these next months living in fear of a shadow. This baby, our baby, is a blessing, Grant. It is a gift. And I will fight with all my might to bring it safely into this world. If something goes wrong, we will face it together, like we always have." She wiped his tears. "I need you to be strong for me. Please believe in us." She saw love fighting pure terror in his eyes. The joy of their new child fought with the ghost of his mother's death. He held her tight enough to steal her breath. "I'll try," he whispered, "but if it comes to choosing between you and the baby—" "Do not," she said softly. "We do not need to think on that now." But she knew he was. She could feel his hands trembling as they held her. The next few days were strained. He made her rest and do less work. But a shadow was in his eyes, a careful distance that broke Lydia's heart. He was terrified, already preparing his own heart to lose her. One silent evening, she finally broke. "Talk to me," what she said. "I am talking to you," he replied. "No, you are being polite. There is a difference. Ever since we found out, you have treated me like I am already dying." Grant flinched. "That is not true." "Is it not? You barely touch me anymore. I wake in the night and feel you watching me, just checking if I am still breathing." Her voice cracked. "You are already grieving for me, Grant, and I am right here." His hands trembled as he set his book down. "I am just trying to prepare for the worst, for losing you, because I cannot let myself hope." He stood up fast and turned his back to her at the window. "I love my mother without ever knowing her. And Daniel, well, losing him nearly broke me. But losing you, Lydia, that would finish the job. So now you're going to spend these months pushing me away so it hurts less? Is that it?" "I do not know what else to do," he yelled. "I cannot be happy about this child when I am terrified it is going to take you away from me. How can I be a good husband when I look at you and see my mother dying?" Lydia stopped her sewing. She went to him and wrapped her arms around his waist. He stiffened, then melted into her embrace. "I am scared too," she said softly. "I would be a fool not to be. But I am also so happy, Grant. Scared and happy, both at once. We are having a baby, a child that is half of you and half of me. A child who will grow up here, loved by both of us," he whispered. "If you survive." "When I survive," she corrected him. "I am strong, Grant. I survived my own mama's death. I survived 6 years with Aunt Margaret and that 4-day train ride to marry a man I did not know. I survived that blizzard to save your life. I am not going to let this beat me." Grant turned, hope and fear warring in his eyes. "Promise me." "I promise to fight," she said. "That is all I can promise." He pulled her close. "It has to be enough," he whispered into her hair. In the weeks after, Grant's fear lessened, but Lydia could see it was not gone. He threw all of his energy into getting ready for the baby, building a fine cradle. He added a nursery onto the house and stockpiled supplies in case of a winter storm. "Grant, the baby is not due until November," Lydia said as he hauled in more wood. "That is 7 months away." I know," he said. "I just want everything to be perfect." Lydia understood he was trying to control the one thing he could not. She tried to be patient, but it was tiring being treated like she was made of glass. The morning sickness finally passed, and besides being tired, she felt healthy and strong. One afternoon, Sarah Mitchell visited. Her own baby was due any day now. She saw Grant hovering while Lydia hung laundry and just shook her head. "Grant Mercer, go find something to do besides watching your wife like she might break." "I am just helping." "No, you are smothering her." "Now get, Grant. Me and Lydia need to have some woman talk. You'll just be underfoot." Grant looked torn. He was reluctant to leave Lydia, but she gave him a reassuring nod. He finally headed off to the barn. "Men," Sarah sighed, settling on the porch bench, "they sure do get worked up when a baby's on the way, My Tom was the same with our first. Wouldn't let me lift a feather. Grant is just terrified I'm going to die, Lydia admitted. His own mother died giving birth to him. Well, bless his heart, Sarah said softly. That explains it all. Poor fella. And poor you, having to carry his worries along with your own. I am scared, Lydia confessed, but I'm trying to stay strong. Grant is scared enough for the both of us. Well, let me set your mind at ease. I've had 3 with a 4th on the way. It ain't a picnic, but it is not the death sentence these men think it is. Most of us ladies get through it just fine. But not all, Lydia whispered. No, Sarah agreed, but life offers no guarantees. A horse could kick you tomorrow. You just cannot live wrapped up in fear, or you forget how to live at all. Lydia felt her eyes well up. That is what I keep telling Grant. Then you keep on telling him, and let the man build his cradles. It makes him feel useful. Just don't you let him put you on a shelf like a porcelain doll. And they talked for hours that afternoon. They spoke of pregnancy and birth and what to expect. Sarah's plain talk did more to soothe Lydia's nerves than all of Grant's fussing ever had. The most important thing, Sarah said, is having someone who knows what they're doing. A good midwife makes all the difference. There's a woman about 15 miles from here, Mary Two Feathers. She is a Rapjo woman and has delivered more babies than anyone in 3 counties. I swear by her. Do you reckon she would help me? Lydia asked. I am sure of it if you send for her ahead of time. She lives near Copper Creek. I will draw you a map. That evening, Lydia told Grant about her. I have met her, Grant said, which surprised Lydia. Her grandson's horse went lame a couple years back. I helped them out. They are good people. If Sarah trusts her, that is good enough for me. I'd like to send word and ask if she'll come when it's time. I will ride out there tomorrow, Grant said. Grant, that is a 15-mile ride. I will ride out tomorrow, Bong, he repeated with purpose. If it gets you an expert, I would ride 100 miles. True to his word, Grant left at the crack of dawn. He came back late that night with good news. Mary Two Feathers had agreed to come. They just needed to give her a few days' notice. She also said, Grant added, looking a bit sheepish, that a woman with her first should walk a lot toward the end. It helps things along, so I shouldn't have been making you rest so much. Lydia hid a smile. By summer, Lydia's belly had started to swell. One day she felt the baby move for the very first time. She called for Grant, and he rushed in, his face a mask of worry. Give me your hand, she said, placing it right on her belly. When the baby kicked again, his eyes went wide with pure wonder. That's our baby, he whispered, sinking to his knees right in front of her. She ran her fingers through his hair as the tension finally left him. I want this baby so much, he said, but I just want you more. Then have faith you can have us both, she answered softly. In the months that followed, something inside Grant started to shift. Joy began to creep in, a little at a time. Beside all the worry, he found happiness building a cradle and carving toys by the firelight. One evening he told her belly, "You're going to love it here." He promised to teach their child how to ride and be strong. And stubborn, Lydia added with a warm smile. Grant chuckled and kissed her. I love you, he said, both of you. In September, news came that Sarah Mitchell had a healthy baby boy. They visited and Lydia held the tiny little fellow with a sense of awe. He is so small, she whispered, looking at him. Sarah just laughed. Believe it or not, Grant was that small once. Seeing them so healthy seemed to calm Grant's nerves for a while. But when October arrived, his worrying came back with a vengeance. He barely got any sleep, jumping at every little sound she made. He rode to Mary Two Feathers' cabin twice just to make sure she would come. Grant, darling, you are going to wear yourself completely out, Lydia said. What if we can't get word to Mary in time, he fretted. What if you sit down and just breathe? She interrupted gently. She took his hand. I need you to listen to me very carefully. When my time comes, I need you to be strong. Can you do that? You're the strongest man I know. You built this whole ranch from nothing. I should have been gone. What if you don't make it through this? Lydia cupped his face. Then you'll survive, Grant. You always do. You'll keep on, and you will raise our baby. And you'll tell them their mama loved them more than anything in this world. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I don't want to do it alone. Then believe we will not have to. Believe in me, Grant. He pulled her close and they just held on to each other. They held on tight, bracing against the fear. Then, on a cold November morning, it started. Nearly 2 weeks early, Lydia woke to a sharp pain that took her breath away. She waited. 15 minutes later, another one hit. The baby was coming. Grant woke to her heavy breathing, and his face went white as a sheet. It is happening, Lydia said. You need to ride for Mary right now. I cannot leave you, he argued. She squeezed his hand through the pain. Go now, or she will not make it here in time. Please, wait, him. He was torn, but he finally gave a nod. I will ride like the wind. Just hold on till I get back. Lydia managed a small smile. I will do my best. Grant kissed her hard and then he was gone, his boots pounding down the porch steps. She heard his horse gallop away. Now she was all alone, and she got to work. She remembered everything Sarah had told her. Gather the clean linens, boil some water. The pains were far apart at first, but by noon they started getting mighty close, and a whole lot stronger. Lydia held onto the table, breathing hard through each one. Where were they, she wondered. And just like that, she heard horses riding up outside. Grant flew through the door with a small, older native woman right behind him. She had kind eyes. This is Mary Two Feathers, Grant said, all out of breath. Mary, this is my wife, Lydia. I can see that, Mary said clearly. She walked right over and placed a hand on Lydia. Her weathered hand rested on Lydia's belly. How far apart? About 5 minutes. A strong one. She looked at a worried Grant. You did good to fetch me. Now I need you to get some water. Lots of it, and all the clean linens you can find. Grant hurried to do as he was told. Mary helped Lydia to the bedroom. Is this your first baby? She asked gently. Yes. Well, this will take some time. You must be strong. She looked right at Lydia. Your man is afraid. His own mother passed away, bringing him into this world. Mary nodded. Then we will show him. We will show him that a birth can be a blessing. The hours that followed were the hardest of all. The pains just kept coming, stronger and closer until they felt like one long, endless wave. Mary tended to Lydia through every wave of pain, offering her sips of water. Grant would not leave her side. I am staying right here, he said with resolve. Well then, hold her hand, Mary told him. Give her something to grip. So Grant sat close, letting Lydia squeeze his hand until his own fingers went numb. He whispered words of love, though his own face was pale with worry. You are doing so good. You are so strong, he said. But another pain seized Lydia, and all she could do was cry out. As night came on, the pains ran together, giving her no rest at all. She was completely worn out. I cannot do this anymore, she gasped to Grant. Yes, you can, he said, his voice full of belief. You are the strongest person I have ever known. We are close now, Mary said. Maybe one more hour. When I tell you to push, you give it your all. An hour felt like a lifetime, but Lydia found strength in the love she saw in Grant's eyes. Then Mary's voice cut through the room. It is time. Push now. Lydia pushed with all of her might, crying out from the effort until she had nothing left. And then, all at once, the pressure was gone. A tiny, angry wail filled the cabin. It is a girl, Mary announced, holding up a small, red-faced baby. You have a daughter. Lydia fell back onto the pillows, weeping with pure relief and happiness. Grant just stared. Mary quickly cleaned the infant, then gently placed her on Lydia's chest. Lydia looked down at her perfect little girl, and her heart felt like it would burst. Hello, little one. The baby quieted down. Grant leaned over them, tears of joy streaming down his face. She is perfect, he whispered. 10 fingers, 10 toes, Mary said with a nod. A healthy baby girl. And the mother as well. You both did very good work today. Grant's look of gratitude made Mary's stern expression soften. Your mother would be so proud. You have broken the curse of fear in this family, she said quietly. This is a fresh start. After Mary had cleaned up and made sure everyone was safe, she prepared to leave. Grant tried to pay her, but she simply waved his hand away. You helped my grandson. We are even now. She looked at the little family. You have a good life ahead. Be sure to cherish it. And with that, she was gone, leaving Grant and Lydia alone with their new daughter. "What should we name her?" Lydia asked softly, watching the baby sleep. Grant was quiet for a moment. "Grace," he said. "Grace Rose Mercer, after your mother." Tears welled in Lydia's eyes. "It is a perfect name." The new family rested together as the first snow began to fall. Snow was coming down, but inside their little house, it was warm with love. "You did it," Grant whispered, his hand resting on Grace's tiny head. "You kept your promise." "We survived," Lydia said softly. He kissed them both, his own tears finally falling. "I was so afraid of losing you. I plumb forgot to be grateful. That won't happen again." "Good, 'cause we're in this for the long haul. Promise?" "I promise, Waitwanis." As little Grace slept between them, Grant and Lydia just looked at each other in wonder. 6 months ago, they were strangers, a girl running from trouble and a lonely man. They came together out of need, but that need had sure grown into something real and strong. In the end, they had saved each other from loneliness, from fear, and from their pasts. And now their future was sleeping soundly on Lydia's chest. "Tell me about your mother," Grant said. "I want Grace to know who she's named for." So Lydia told him stories. She spoke of Rowan's kindness, her infectious laugh, and her deep, unwavering strength. Grant memorized every single word to tell Grace one day. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, a family born from hope and hard times settled in for their very first night. They were whole, they were safe, and bless their hearts, they were finally home. The first weeks with Grace were a whirlwind of sleepless nights and learning her different cries. Lydia was bone-tired in a way she'd never known, but it was a good kind of exhaustion. The kind you get from pouring your whole heart into something precious. Grant was a changed man. The man once terrified of loss was now devoted to his wife and their new baby girl. He'd walk the floors with a fussy grace, singing quiet songs in his deep, rumbling voice. It always seemed to calm her right down. "You're a natural," Lydia told him one evening. "Truth is, I'm scared I'm doing it all wrong," he admitted. "But I love her so much it aches." Well, I think that's just what being a parent feels like. December brought more snow. They settled into a rhythm on the ranch. Lydia would nurse Grace while Grant did chores. Then he would take the baby so Lydia could rest her body and her mind by the fire. One afternoon, a knock came at the door. Grant opened it to find Sarah Mitchell. She held a basket and her own little baby. "I know it's freezing, but I had to come," Sarah said, stomping the snow off her boots. "I had to see this miracle baby for myself. Tom told me you rode like a demon to fetch Mary Two Feathers for Lydia." "I'd have ridden through fire itself to keep her safe," Grant said, taking Sarah's coat. "Him. You know, folks in town thought you were plumb crazy for placing that advertisement. They said no good woman would ever answer it, or that you would just get taken for a ride." "They were wrong," Grant said, looking at Lydia. "Mighty wrong. You got just what you were hoping for. Someone with a heart wanting to be loved." Sarah smiled. "And I reckon you kept your end of the deal too. I have never seen two people more suited for each other." Over tea, Sarah talked about her life with 4 children, the beautiful chaos. She adored baby Grace, calling her perfect, and gave Lydia all sorts of motherly advice. "The hardest part," Sarah said as she got ready to go, "is remembering you are still a husband and wife, and not just a mother and father. It is easy to get lost in the baby. Do not make that mistake." After she was gone, Lydia thought about that. It was true, all her energy went to Grace. She and Grant were in the same bed, but they were so bone-tired they just fell into it each night. They had not truly connected like they used to. That evening, once Grace was asleep, Lydia found Grant just sitting by the fire. "What is on your mind?" she asked, sitting down next to him. "Just how much things have changed in a year. Last December, I was all alone in this big house, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life putting that ad in the paper." He turned to her. "And then you showed up. I was not alone, but I was still lonely. We were polite strangers under one roof, and now I cannot imagine life without y'all. You and Grace are my entire world." He took her hand. But Sarah was right. "We have been so focused on our baby. I miss you, Lydia. I miss just talking with you." "I miss that too," Lydia said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Tell me something I do not know about you." Grant was quiet for a moment. When I was a boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, I would climb a big hill near our farm. I would sit for hours dreaming about all the places I would go. I wanted to see the ocean, big cities, to have real adventures. He smiled a little. Instead, I am on a cattle ranch in the middle of nowhere. Do you regret it? Not for a second, because I learned that a real adventure is not about the places you go. It is about who you are with. Being here with you and Grace is the greatest adventure I could ever ask for. Lydia lifted her head and kissed him. I love you. I love you too. They sat in a quiet comfort, listening to little Grace from her cradle. Outside, the winter wind howled, but inside they were warm and safe together. Lydia, Grant said quietly, yes? Thank you for answering. Thank you for taking a chance on a stranger. Thank you for Grace, for all of it. And thank you for keeping your promise, Lydia replied. You promised a home and a chance at happiness you gave me. It was a real transformative love. He held her close. Life on the ranch settled down. Grace grew, her eyes watching them. Her first smile made Grant cry, but their easy peace would not last. One morning, Grace had a fever. Panic seized Lydia. Something's wrong. Grant saw her and his face paled. Lydia's voice broke. She was fine. Don't you worry. We will handle this. I'm riding the 6 miles to Stillwater. A storm's coming, but she needs him. Keep her cool. I'll be back fast. Lydia tended to her sick baby. She prayed as a bad storm hit. She feared losing both of them. She focused on keeping Grace alive. Grant returned with the doctor. Dr. Patterson went right to Grace. He examined the small, weak baby. It's croup, the doctor announced. Her fever is high, but not dangerous. With good care, she will be fine. He told them how to help her breathe. Relief made Lydia's legs feel weak. Grant caught her and held her up. The doctor praised Grant's quick ride. They held Grace upright all night. By evening, her fever finally broke. She is all right, Lydia whispered, mostly to herself. Grant nodded, exhausted. She is a fighter, just like her mama. They stayed with Grace all night, taking turns watching her. By morning, the fever had broken. She was nursing like nothing had happened. In 3 days, she was back to cooing and smiling. But that scare had surely shaken them. Grant and Lydia held their daughter a little closer now. They treasured every small moment. They understood just how fragile this life could be. Seeing Grace so sick, Grant said one night, that was a whole different kind of fear. She is just a baby. She cannot fight for herself, he said. That is why she has us, Lydia promised. We will always fight for her. Forever, he added, forever. When spring finally melted the snow, the valley turned green and beautiful. Grace was thriving. Her sweet, bubbling laugh filled their home with pure joy. She was curious about everything, from the chickens in the yard to her own tiny hands. Grant built her a little swing on the porch. Lydia would sit and push her for hours. She told Grace stories about her grandmother, Rowan, and about all the places she had seen. Your grandmother was a brave woman, Lydia told her sweet baby girl. She crossed an entire ocean for a better life. My own mother was brave too. You come from strong women, Grace. Do not you ever forget that. One warm afternoon, Tom and Sarah Mitchell stopped by for a visit. They brought all 4 of their children to play in the yard. Sitting on the porch, Sarah announced, well, I have got some news. We are expecting number 5. Lydia's eyes went wide. Sarah, that is wonderful news. When are you due? Late November, I reckon, Sarah said, patting her belly. God had other plans for us. How in the world do you do it? Lydia asked. I am worn out with just one. Sarah just laughed. Oh, honey, you learn to live tired. Besides, the older ones help out. It gets easier in some ways and harder in others. Tom teased Grant. Y'all thinking about having more? Grant looked right at Lydia. The question was in his eyes. Maybe, Lydia said with a soft smile. Someday. Well, at least you know you can do it, Sarah said kindly. You get through the first one, and that is always the scariest part. After their friends left, Grant turned to Lydia. Would you really want more children? More children? Grant asked gently. I'd love that, but only if you do. Lydia remembered the difficult birth, but then she remembered holding her daughter. The love was worth it all. Yes, she said. Someday, let's fill this home with laughter. He held her close. We'll build our family. That summer, they worked the ranch together. Grant taught her the business from books to cattle. He came to rely on her judgment. We're partners in this, he told her, my equal in running this whole place. But I was so green 6 months ago, she said. You're smart, and you see things I miss. This note on feed costs is brilliant. Lydia felt a swell of pride in her chest. For the first time, she was a respected partner. In August, a letter came from back east. Lydia's hands shook as she opened it. A lawyer wrote that her Aunt Margaret had died. As the only kin, she was to inherit everything. She felt nothing at all, just a strange emptiness. Grant read the letter. Are you all right, darling? I feel nothing. She was so cruel to me. That's understandable, he said gently. The lawyer needs to know what I want to do. It's your decision. I've got your back. After a few days, Lydia wrote to the lawyer. She told him to sell everything for an orphanage. She was free of that life. Grant nodded, proud. I reckon that's wise. Best to leave the past where it belongs. Lydia felt a great weight lift. That chapter of my life is now closed. This ranch is my home. For Grace's first birthday, they planned a small party. They invited the neighbors, including the Mitchells and Mary Two Feathers. It was the biggest gathering they'd had. You sure about this? Grant asked. It'll be wonderful, Lydia said. She needs to know she has a community. The party was a happy, chaotic mess, with kids running and folks talking. All the attention wore Grace out, and she fell asleep right on her mama. As she was leaving, Mary Two Feathers pulled Lydia aside for a quiet word. You have built a good life out here, she said, looking all around. I came to deliver a baby for two people held together only by hope. Now I see a true family that is bound together by real love. Lydia's eyes welled up with tears. Thank you for helping us with everything. Mary squeezed her hand. Your daughter is blessed and will grow up strong here. After everyone went home, they stood together on the quiet front porch. Watching the sunset, Grant held Grace as she slept soundly in his arms. 1 year ago today, Grant said softly, she was only just a hope. And now she's ours, Lydia added. A month before that, we were strangers. So scared on that train platform. Do you ever regret answering that ad? Lydia looked at her husband, this good, kind man who had given her a new life. She saw their daughter, sleeping peacefully and safe in her father's arms. She looked at their ranch house glowing, the mountains standing guard behind it. Under a beautiful Texas sky, she said, never, not for a single second. This life, this family, this is more than I ever dreamed was possible. Grant shifted Grace to one arm and pulled Lydia in close with the other. My advertisement asked for a heart to love, but I found my whole world. I found you. Lydia whispered back, you and Grace are my home, Grant. They stood there in the falling dark, a family built against all the odds. They had made something real and lasting from nothing more than hope. And tonight, in that small valley, their story was truly just beginning. In that house, their family was complete and filled with love. 2 years later, Lydia gave birth to their son, Daniel. His big sister, Grace, was just thrilled with the new baby. Grant was a calm and steady presence, his heart full of faith in his strong wife. Grace insisted on being a big helper, always singing the same songs her daddy sang to her. Watching her two children together made Lydia's heart feel like it would nearly burst with joy. We're a family, Grace would proudly tell anyone who'd listen. Mama, Papa, me, and baby Daniel. That's right, sweetheart, Lydia would say, smiling. Their ranch was doing well, too. Grant's hard work and Lydia's smarts meant their little piece of Texas was growing. They hired help now and then, but Grant always kept the operation small enough. I won't be the kind of father mine was, he'd promised Lydia. I'm not gonna miss a thing. And he was a man of his word. He taught Grace to ride when she was just 4. He carved little toys for Daniel and read stories to them both every single night. On those cool winter evenings, they would all gather around the warm fire. It was a simple life, a quiet life, and it was absolutely perfect for them. One evening when Grace was 5, she looked up from her little school slate. Mama, tell us the story of how you and Papa met. You promised you would. Lydia looked over at Grant, who just smiled and gave a nod. It was time they knew. All right, she began. Once upon a time, there was a girl who was very lonely. She lived in a big city a long way from here, and she didn't think she would ever be happy. Why was she sad? Grace asked, her eyes wide. Because she had lost her family. And the person she lived with was very unkind. But then she saw an ad in a paper. It was from a man far away who was looking for a wife. That was Papa, Grace shouted. That's right. He wrote that he wanted someone with a heart that wished to be loved. Grant picked up the story then. And when your brave mama wrote to me, I was so glad. I was lonely too, living out here with nobody to talk to but the cattle. So what happened next? Asked little Daniel. Lydia smiled down at him. Mama, well, the girl got on a train and traveled for 4 whole days to meet the man. She was scared, not knowing if he would keep his promises. But Papa's not mean, Grace said. No, he's not, Lydia agreed. When your mama met your papa, I saw he was good and kind. So we got married right then and there. And then you fell in love? Grace asked. Grant smiled at Lydia. Well, our love took a little time to grow. At first, we were just polite strangers living in the same house. But we soon started to see the real good in one another. He was so kind and strong. Then a terrible blizzard hit the ranch. It was the worst storm I had ever laid eyes on in my life. I went to help the animals and got hurt bad out in the snow. Your mama came right out into that storm. I was terrified, Lydia admitted. But the thought of losing your papa was much, much scarier. She saved my life, Grant said, holding her tight. That night, we knew. We knew it was real love. And then you had me, Grace declared. Lydia laughed. You came along a little later, sweetheart. But we'll always be together, Grace asked. Always, Grant promised. We love you and Daniel more than anything in this whole wide world. Happy with that answer, the children went back to playing. Lydia leaned on his shoulder. He whispered, You left out the best parts. Like how I was falling for you so hard I could barely think straight, and how your smile made me feel like I could take on the world. I thanked the good Lord every single day that you answered my letter. Those parts are just for us, she whispered back. They're our secret. He kissed her forehead. I love you, Lydia Mercer. Today and always. I love you too. You kept every single one of your promises to me. You promised me a home, respect, and more kindness than I'd ever known. She looked right in his eyes. You promised me a chance at happiness, but you gave me so much more. You gave me our family. You gave me, You are everything I ever hoped for, Grant said, his voice thick with love. More than I deserve. Lydia smiled. You deserve all the happiness in the world. And I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it. The fire crackled in the hearth as a gentle snow began to fall outside. Grace practiced her letters on a slate, and Daniel hummed while stacking his blocks. And Grant and Lydia sat together watching their children and the beautiful life they had built. That one advertisement was her leap of faith. She was a cherished wife, not a lonely maid. Grant was no longer a man haunted by ghosts. He was a husband and a father with purpose. They had saved each other in the truest way. They rescued one another from loneliness and despair. What they built together was beautiful and real. Their life had its own challenges and great joys. Their love grew from a desperate seed of hope. It became strong enough to weather any storm. With their children laughing, they held each other close. They knew they had found what they were looking for, a love that was chosen and fiercely protected, a love that would last for a whole lifetime. It all started with an ad and a girl's hope. This was home. This was family. This was true love.